Hey everybody, welcome to Uplift. My name is Kyle. I'm so glad that you are here. We're starting a new series called The Big Questions. That's what it's called. We're going to be answering some of the big questions over the next few weeks, and we're not going to pull our punches. We're going to be talking about the big stuff. And tonight, the question is God real? So I want to begin this whole series with a disclaimer, okay? And this is important. There is no need to be afraid of big questions. Big questions are not the enemies of faith. In fact, I think Jesus expected big questions. I think that. I want you to listen to his own words from Matthew chapter 22 when he said, and he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind." With all your mind. Loving God with all of your mind means some intellectual engagement. That's part of it. Intellect should not be diminished in worship. God invites your whole self into this relationship, including your reason. It's all there. Your questions, big or small, are not unwelcome before the throne of God. In fact, believing in God, believing in the person of Jesus, I'm going to say this sometimes goes beyond reason. It's all miraculous, right? But it's never absent of reason. There are mysteries here. Miracles are mysteries. Belief in God isn't pretending to have no questions. It's trusting God even with your questions. That's the point of belief. And the title of this message, right? It's the first big question. Is God real? That's the big one. All questions kind of flow from this. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But I think it's worthwhile to address why this is even a question at all. In other words, the question may not be the reality of God. The question may be why we even ask that question in the first place, or why we even doubt the realness of God. I think there's a few reasons. First, I think people doubt because of believers. I know that's a hard thing to say, but I think people doubt the realness of God because of people who say they believe in God, right? George Barna is a church study, church growth, pulse of the church expert. Probably heard him referenced from all kinds of preachers. And in a recent study, he uncovered that one of the leading reasons why people walk away from faith, or at least begin to doubt it, isn't quite what you expect. It's not always because people have read some scientific article or watched some documentary or picked up some philosophy textbook. George Barna said that the number one reason people begin to question or leave their faith is the hypocrisy they observe in those who claim to follow Jesus. That's quite sobering. Believers who live as if they do not believe cause serious repercussions. And people who question or leave their faith wonder that if this is what faith produces, this sort of behavior, lifestyle, how serious can belief in Jesus really be? I mean, if this is what Jesus leads to, is he real? Is he good? I think people doubt that because of the way believers live. The second reason I think people doubt the existence of God is just because of facts. Just because of facts. Now, let me explain this. Not all doubts come from disappointment in people. Some are rooted in real, honest questions. Something that we call fact-based questions. These are intellectual questions in nature. You probably talked about these in Bible studies or small groups. Questions about history, about the Bible. Where did the dinosaurs come from, right? About the resurrection, about science, about philosophy. And these are good questions. They're strong questions. But what often happens is this. Someone brings a fact-based question, and then they're met with a faith-based answer. In other words, they're asking these really deep questions about the validity of this stuff, and then they get, because I've gotten it, listen, just believe. You don't need to be asking these questions. You just need to trust. You just need to trust more, and you need to doubt less. And that pushes people away because sometimes those questions are just somewhat dismissed. Or sometimes just the pursuit of facts causes people to doubt. The third reason, I think, is just because of experience. People doubt because life happens. Something falls apart. A person leaves. A diagnosis comes. A prayer isn't answered. A tragedy breaks something deep, and then now there's this gap between what you expected God to be and what you've experienced in your actual life. In fact, disappointment is defined as the gap between expectation and experience. And sometimes the question isn't, is God real? The question is God good? Can I trust him? Does he care? Does he still love me? Is God for me? Those are the questions. And they're sacred questions, and they deserve more than just cliches. They deserve presence, and they deserve patience. And the fourth reason I think people doubt is just because it's easy to do so, because it avoids accountability. Sometimes if we're honest, we begin to question God, not because of intellectual doubts or because of personal suffering, but because we want to live how we want to live, right? If there is a God, especially one who is holy and righteous and personal, then we are not the final authority. If we give ourselves permission to doubt, then we've given ourselves permission to live as we choose. And that makes it real easy to doubt. So listen, hypocrisy, facts, experience, accountability. People come to this question for those reasons. So what I want us to do is I kind of want us to zoom out a little bit, right? And I want us to take a look at the reality of this question at its base level. Because really, wherever you are in life, you're here really by divine appointment. And if you've come to doubting the reality of God because of one of those four reasons, or maybe there are others, then I want to tell you that as a church, we're here to provide clarity for you. We're here to provide clarity. And while we've tackled, and we will continue to tackle those four reasons throughout this series, I can at least begin by affirming for you the existence of God. God is real. He's real. And so to explore this, I want us to take a look at three categories of evidence. And these are just broad strokes. These are not exhaustive studies. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. But I'm going to tell you, by the end of this, you're going to think I am. I'm just standing on the shoulders of people who have done some really valuable research here. These three categories are meaningful to me, and I hope they're going to offer some clarity to you. So, considering if God is real, we first have to consider matter, real things, all of creation. The truth is this, that the universe, everything that exists, has an uncaused first cause. That's a mouthful. The universe has an uncaused first cause. Let me explain this a little bit. When pondering the origins of the universe, we encounter really three primary hypotheses. The first is this: the universe has always existed. It stretches infinitely into the past. It will stretch infinitely into the future. That's the first option we have when we look at the reality of life and matter. Here's the second option: that the universe sprang into existence from nothing. You've heard this, without any cause, it just kind of happened. It was a series of happy accidents, right? That's the second option. When we consider the reality of life itself, we come to option C, which is this: the universe was caused to exist by something beyond itself. Now, for centuries, many in the scientific and philosophical communities leaned toward the first option, believing in an eternal universe. This belief often underpinned atheistic worldviews, right? As an eternal universe seemingly negated the need for a creator. If it's always existed, how could someone have created it? But the 20th century brought some transformative thoughts and insights. In 1915, Albert Einstein introduced the general theory of relativity. You've probably heard of this, which revealed that space and time are dynamic and they can stretch or contract. So when applied to the universe, the math showed that the universe must be expanding. That's the reality of it. Like a balloon inflated over time. And so what this means is that this expansion implies a beginning, a moment of inception. Further evidence came with the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope in 1990, which allowed us to observe the universe's expansion more clearly. The James Webb Telescope, which was launched in 2021, has provided even deeper insights, reaffirming that the universe had a definitive starting point. In other words, Hubble confirmed the direction and the speed of this expansion, and the James Webb Telescope is helping to observe earlier stages of galaxy formation, consistent with a universe that began at a single point in time. So this all leads us to the concept of an uncaused first cause, a foundational principle that suggests that the universe's existence points to a cause beyond itself. In fact, it's almost unanimous now. No serious scientist argues the universe has existed forever. It had a beginning. And you're going to hear this come out with some scientists. They're going to call it the Big Bang or some explosion of light. But you and I, we know it as God. God did this. And here's what's striking. Let me kind of give this to you. Of all the major religious texts in the history of the world, pick of religion, all of their texts, the Bible that you own, most clearly and uniquely declares that the universe had a definitive beginning, caused by a personal, eternal God who exists outside of time and space. And while other traditions may offer metaphysical ideas about these origins, no other ancient sacred text so plainly and powerfully affirms a singular starting point like what Genesis 1 says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And in verse 3, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. You won't find that in any other religion. Doesn't exist. Life itself, all that we see and know, flows out from the Word of God and the light that He spoke into existence. The Bible is not a scientific textbook. It's not a history manual. It's the self-revelation of God, the story of His people. And yet somehow it holds these truths, these scientific and these historical truths that archaeology and modern science are increasingly confirming. In a way, science is actually catching up with the truths of God. I want to read you a quote from Robert Jastrow. Robert Jastrow is an agnostic astrophysicist. This is what he said about the beginning of the universe, and he wrote this in 1985. The seed of everything that's happened in the universe was planted in that first instant. Again, agnostic astrophysicist. Every star, he wrote, every planet, every living creature came into being as a result of events set in motion at the moment of a cosmic explosion. Pretty powerful. This guy who does not believe that there is a saving God certainly believes that there is a God, that everything had to flow from them. There was a singular moment when the universe began, but here's the question that's still set before science, right? What caused that moment? What set all this in motion? The naturalistic or atheistic answer is this. And you've heard this, nothing caused it. This is it. Nothing caused any of this. Out of nothing, something emerged. Out of nothing, everything emerged, right? That's the atheist worldview. It says that the universe created itself, but that flies in the very face of the very scientific method that says everything has a cause. Cause and effect is foundational to science. Everything in the universe is an effect of a cause. And that cause must be separate from the effect. If the universe began, then whatever caused it had to be independent of it. So what caused it, right? I'm going to show you something. This is called the Kalam cosmological argument. It's an argument based on logic. It's a philosophical and theological argument for the existence of God based upon the beginning of the universe. Base level arguments. It has its roots in medieval Islamic philosophy of all things, and it's been popularized in modern times by Christian philosopher William Lane Craig. I've read some of his books. Pretty fantastic guy. It follows logic to its inevitable conclusion. Look at this. The first part of this argument is this, that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Now, this is philosophy, right? Number 2, the universe began to exist. Therefore, number 3, the universe has a cause. Logic. So if the universe began to exist, it couldn't have caused itself. It couldn't have come from absolutely nothing, because nothing can't do anything because it's nothing. So what kind of cause could create everything? Well, it'd have to be this. Look at this. It has to be outside of time, because time began at the beginning. The cause has to be outside of space, because space began at the beginning. And the cause has to be immaterial. It's not made of the physical stuff that's created. And the fourth thing is that it obviously has to be incredibly powerful to bring all matter and energy and time and space into existence. So the first cause, the cause of the universe, must be outside of matter, outside of space, and outside of time. And not only that, it had to be so powerful, so transcendent, that the universe it created stretches out across thousands or maybe even millions of years to come. This universe, filled with somewhere between 100 and 200 billion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, all has been created by something. That something is God. Look at what Hebrews 11 said. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God. All of these things. So that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. The Lord says in Isaiah, to whom then will you compare me that I should be like him? Lift up your eyes on high and see who created these. Who brings out their host by number, calling them by name, by the greatness of his might. And because he is strong in power, not one is missing. In verse 28, the Lord says, haven't you known? Haven't you heard? The Lord is an everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He doesn't faint. He doesn't grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. There is a first cause, y'all, and that cause is God. He's real, and none of this exists. None of this exists without him. None of it does. The second category that confirms the existence of God is this. The universe exhibits fine-tuned design. The universe exhibits fine-tuned design. This is so cool. Just the stuff I read this week. The cosmos, everything that exists, operates with a remarkable precision. The laws of physics, the constants of nature, and the conditions of life all align in a way that suggests intentional calibration. Earth, you probably heard this, is often called the Goldilocks planet. You remember the story of Goldilocks and the three bears, right? Little girl named Goldilocks finds 3 bowls of porridge. One's too hot, one's too cold. The other one is just right. She finds 3 chairs. One's too big, one's too small. The other one's just right. She finds 3 beds. One's too hard, one's too soft. One is just right. Goldilocks is a high-maintenance little girl. That's what we learned from that. This term, the Goldilocks planet, was actually used first in 1959 by Chinese-American astrophysicist Su Shu Huang in order to emphasize the importance of a planet's distance from its star in determining its potential habitability. In other words, that's Earth. We're just the right size. We're just the right distance from the sun. And we're just the right place in the Milky Way. We're just right. Scientists have discovered dozens of independent laws and constants in physics and chemistry, biology, earth sciences that make life possible on Earth. And while the exact number of these varies depending on classification, these laws govern everything from gravity and thermodynamics to genetics and ecosystems, everything across the universe, reflecting an intricately ordered and intelligible universe. Laws so finely tuned that even the smallest change, the tiniest nudge in any of them would tip the balance one way or the other. And life as we know it would be impossible. I want you to imagine the force of gravity for a minute. Physicists have often shown that if the force of gravity were even slightly stronger or weaker by as little as 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, that's 10 with 40 zeros. If it's just off by that much, the universe as we know it couldn't support life. Stars wouldn't form, galaxies wouldn't hold together, the delicate balance needed for life would unravel. Imagine gravity is like the dial on a radio. Remember radios? Remember those? Dials on a radio. It has to be tuned exactly right for life to exist. And if you changed that dial by even one tiny click out of 10 to the 40th power, 10 with 40 zeros, the universe wouldn't work. One click. In other words, gravity is so finely tuned that if even the slightest change by 1 in 10 to the 40th power would mean no structure, no life, no anything. Let me tell you a little bit about this. It's like trying to hit a single atom, atom, from across the Milky Way galaxy with an arrow. That's the level of precision gravity is working with. Let me make this even more simpler. The Milky Way galaxy is about 100,000 light years wide. An atom, atom, is so tiny that you could fit about 100 trillion atoms across the width of your fingernail. So I want you to imagine standing at one end of the Milky Way galaxy, blindfolded, holding a bow and arrow. Then imagine firing that arrow 100,000 light years across space, and somehow it lands perfectly on one single atom on the other side, the one that you meant for it to hit. That's how precise 1 in 10 to the 40th power is. It's a poetic way of saying the force of gravity is so perfectly balanced that even the slightest change would mean a completely different universe. No stars or planets or life. By the way, it's not just gravity. The energy that sustains the world, the energy of universe expansion, if that energy were smaller by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 16th power, or larger by that same almost incomprehensible fraction, the universe would either collapse on itself or expand so fast that stars could never even form. No stars, no planets, no life, Earth itself, the home of humankind, it's all over. But as it is, it's just right. It's like the entire universe is sitting on a knife's edge. In any slight variation in any of these values, and we don't get galaxies or stars or carbon, we don't get you. You don't exist. Think about DNA to the details of the human cell, the intricate, mind-boggling complexity of the very blueprint of life. It's got to be just right. There's a book that came out a few years ago called The Intelligent Universe. Fred Hoyle is an astronomer, and he wrote this book. And he compared the odds of human life, particularly DNA, emerging by chance to something completely extraordinary. This is what he said. He said, imagine handling a well-scrambled Rubik's Cube. Remember those little toys? Little cubes, and you had to match all the colors and the sides. Pretty complex. I never could figure it out. Imagine handing one of those well-scrambled Rubik's Cube to an unfathomably large number of blindfolded people. This is the amount, he said, 10 to the 50th power. 10 with 50 zeros. That's how many people. Everybody gets a Rubik's Cube. Billions, trillions of people. And expecting all of them to solve that puzzle simultaneously. That's how unlikely life came into being by chance. So here's the question, is all of this the result of random chance or intentional design? Well, let me suggest this. Design points to a designer. I want you to consider the words of the prophet Isaiah. The Lord said, I made the earth and I created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens. I commanded all their hosts. The psalmist said, Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom, you've made them all, and the earth is full of your creatures. We believe God is real because the universe is expertly, divinely, finely tuned. And here's the third reason we believe God is real. It's this. Humanity shares a common moral consciousness. Humanity shares a common moral consciousness. People are intrinsically, from the inside, bound together by a common consciousness, a common moral standard. Look, every culture, every people group on earth can make up their own cultural etiquettes, right? Their own norms for what's right and what's best for them. They can do that. They do it. But no group can invent a universal moral standard, one that not only defines what is good, but obligates human conscience. Look, we teach laws, but we can't create a common consciousness, an objective moral value that binds us all and demands accountability. How is it that a majority of people worldwide believe killing innocent lives is wrong? Or how is it that all of us feel rage when we see innocent children abused or exploited, when we see injustice anywhere? We hear that voice rising inside of us that says, that's wrong. That's wrong. No matter where you live, no matter what era you belong to, something inside you declares, this is good, this is evil. This is moral, this is immoral. Where does all that come from? Well, could it be that the designer of all creation implanted these values into the hearts of his creation? Values that are applied to our conscience, holding us accountable. I mean, Paul said this in Romans chapter 2. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts while their conscience also bears witness. And their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them. This universal moral awareness suggests that our ethical inclinations are not merely social constructs. They're reflections of a higher moral order instilled within us. You know that feeling when your conscience accuses you? That pang of guilt? Other times when it defends you and gives you peace? That's God's law written on your heart. It's God who placed the very parameters of our conscience, our innate sense of right and wrong and good and evil. He defined those. He gave them to you. He did this so that either we would be defended when we do what's right or accused when we do what's wrong. And look, in contemplating all of these evidences, by the way, the universe's origin, its intricate design, our shared moral compass, I think all of these things invite us to see the reality of God. In fact, look anywhere in the universe, right? As far as you want, or look deep inside your own body, you're going to see traces. You're going to see evidence, the attributes of God's handiwork. Paul said it this way in the first chapter of his letter to the Romans, God's invisible attributes, namely his eternal power, his divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. You can see God. People are without excuse. God, even though he's invisible, has left behind visible evidence in his created world. His invisible attributes, they shine through what he has made. You've heard of the Institute of Creation. They put together a nice little bullet point list when reflecting the attributes of God as revealed through creation. I want to read these to you. The first cause of limitless space must be infinite. The first cause of endless time must be eternal. The first cause of boundless energy must be omnipotent. The first cause of universal interrelationships must be omnipresent. The first cause of infinite complexity must be omniscient. The first cause of spiritual values must be spiritual. The first cause of human responsibility must be volitional. The first cause of human integrity must be truthful. The first cause of human love must be loving. And the first cause of life itself must be living. Antony Flew was once one of the greatest spokesmen for atheism. You can Google him. You can probably find some of his stuff on YouTube. He readily debated Christians. He advocated for atheism. And he always said that he would follow the evidence wherever it led. And in 2004, the atheist community was shocked when Antony Flew announced that he now believed in God. And he published a book with this powerful title, There Is a God, How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Changed His Mind. Here's what he wrote. I said from the beginning that I was always moved to where the evidence led me. And now the evidence is overwhelming that God must exist. The evidence is overwhelming, and I cannot turn a blind eye to it. Listen, if you're a believer, I want you to be encouraged. The God we worship, He is the uncaused first cause who made everything. But if you're on a journey of discovering truth and faith, let me tell you this, stay on that journey. Look to the evidence with an open heart. What makes more sense, that all of this is a meaningless cosmic accident, or that something emerged out of nothing and created everything? Or that there is a God who created the world with purpose and meaning and destiny. And the remarkable truth is this, that the God who made all of this, He also made me and you as the crown of His creation. He chose us to love, to save, to die for, to resurrect for, and to bring us into a relationship where He could be fully known. And through Jesus, the evidence is not just in the universe or the human body, it's God becoming flesh. He didn't just want to create you, He wanted to save you. He wanted to know you, and He wants you to know Him personally, not just theoretically, not just scientifically. He's pursued you because He loves you. This is a God who still lives. The evidence is all around us. It's in the world, it's on the cross, and it's in the resurrection.